course. I want to start out by thanking our sponsors, Northeast Delta Dental. Tom Raffio, the CEO there, is not able to join us, but I think we have some of his colleagues here with us. I want to thank Northeast Delta Dental. Also, the U.S. Chamber Foundation. We have Caitlin Cadella here from the Chamber Foundation. I'll introduce Caitlin in a little bit, but thank the U.S. Chamber Foundation and Northeast Delta Dental for their support. I also want to thank the Hampshire School Administrators Association for partnering with us on this event. I want to set the stage for the discussion we're about to have by sharing this with you. Our education system is falling behind by many measures. American students rank 21st in science and 26th in math, beaten out by students in countries like China, Poland, and Canada. After 40 years, 8th grade reading scores have improved only negligibly. The consequences of trailing other nations with which we compete are already resonating in the marketplace and in households. Young Americans aged 25 through 34 rank 12th in college attainment. And while young adults around the world are quickly surpassing their parents' education, America's young people as a whole have nearly matched the attainment levels of the previous generation by the mid-30s. U.S. employers, including BIA members all over the state, are taking notice. They've seen a growing gap between the skills they need and the skills recent high school and college graduates have developed. Data supports their claims. Last year, nationally, 3 out of every 4 graduating high school students were not adequately prepared for college. The number of undergraduates placed in remediation is shocking. Half of all undergraduates and 70% of community college students take at least one remedial course. Of the community college students who enroll in remediation, only a quarter will graduate within 8 years, often because they never advanced to credit-bearing prerequisite courses. In the past, most educational standards did not portray an honest picture of students' preparedness for college and careers. Students were a mile wide and an inch deep, with teachers left to determine what should be prioritized. A high school diploma has been an empty promise for success, as far too many students receive good grades and were told they were on track, only to fail in college-level work. Students need to be placed on a solid path to succeed in college or careers, not just told they're headed in the right direction. So with that as a bit of a backdrop, I want to welcome our panel of experts who are well-versed in workplace education and skill requirements and in Common Core standards. Let me begin by introducing Caitlin Cadella on my far right. Caitlin is Senior Manager for Programs at the U.S. Chamber Foundation's Education and Workforce Program, the nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 program dedicated to strengthening the nation's educational standards and the quality of its workforce. Caitlin develops and manages the U.S. Chamber Foundation's programs for K-12 education. In addition, she's responsible for building coalitions with other nonprofit groups, chambers of commerce, and businesses. Caitlin received a Bachelor of Arts degree in social work with a concentration in policy from Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania. Caitlin, welcome. Heather Gage, in the middle, is the Director of Educational Improvement and Chief of Staff of the New Hampshire Department of Education, and has over 15 years of experience working with school districts, post-secondary education, advocacy organizations, and state government. Her areas of expertise include strategic planning, policy development, project planning and management, and consensus development, specifically in the area of education reform. Heather earned a master's in public administration from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and a bachelor's degree in social work from the University of Maine at Presque Isle. Heather, thank you for being here. And finally, Evan Smith, to my immediate right, probably figured that out, has been with advanced manufacturer Hypotherm since 1992, where he has worked in a succession of marketing and business management roles. In 2001, he assumed the role of Vice President and General Manager, overseeing Hypotherm's business units, the global sales organization, engineering, marketing, and strategic planning functions. In 2012, Evan was appointed Hypotherm's president, overseeing all business operations and functions, and reporting to Chairman and CEO Dick Couch. As a side note, Dick is a former chair of the board of directors of the BIA and continues to serve on my board. Prior to joining Hypotherm, Evan served as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy and worked in financial and health services consulting. He holds a BA from Dartmouth College and an MBA from Harvard, so I want to welcome all of our panelists. Thank you so much. The format of this will be as follows. We're going to give each of our panelists 5 to 10 minutes tops to present their perspective about a particular aspect of the Common Core standards, and then we'll engage in what we hope will be a robust Q&A session. So let me begin with Caitlin Cadell and ask a couple of questions to sort of set the stage. Why and how did the Common Core state standards come about? What are they? And why is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce the largest business advocacy group in the world so vigorously supporting them? Okay.
Well, thanks so much for inviting us to be here, and thank you all for coming. I think when we talk about the standards, it's important to sort of just set the stage. And Jim, you sort of did this, earlier in your comments, but it's really important to know that in 2013, among 34 leading industrialized countries, the U.S. is 17th in literacy, 21st in science, 26th in math. And that's all down from 11th in literacy 2 years prior to that, 17th in science 2 years prior to that, and 25th in math. 3 out of every 4 of our kids that are going to college are not adequately prepared, and 70% of the kids in community college require at least one remediation course. So when we think about that, it's sort of setting the stage for higher standards, right? So it was 2008, 2010. There were these conversations with the CCSSO, which is the Chief State School Officers Association, and NGA. 45 governors, bipartisan, came together and said, we need to talk about this. Education is our future. So they came together and they talked about this, and I'm sure that I'm not telling any of you anything new. You're obviously here because you care about education, you care about your community. So you probably know that they went through this, they talked about what they needed in their states, they talked about where the differences are. Prior to this, we have 50 states, 50 different set of standards for kids that are in 4th, 8th. It doesn't matter. Every grade is a different look. So when we're in the military, people move. It's very different. What you're going to get in Maine than what you're going to get in New Hampshire than what you're going to get in Louisiana. So I think when we talk about high standards, I think we need to just make sure that we understand that Common Core is a set of elevated high standards for 2 things, for English language arts and math. And these standards are just that. It is the what. This is what our children need to know. And the curriculum is the how. And the curriculum is, and as always, it's in the state, it's in the local school district, it's in the local school board, it's in the teacher's hands. I, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, would not be sitting up here if that was changing. Let me make that very clear. So I think, another important piece is the business community, and you ask, why is the U.S. Chamber involved in this? We're involved in this because we've heard for years from our business communities, like people like Evan, who cannot find qualified workers to fill the jobs that are open in their company. And it doesn't matter if it's administrative assistants, if it's electricians, if it's skilled work, or if it's executive level. It's all the same. We're all feeling that pressure, and it's only getting worse. We have 4 million jobs open right now, and that is despite the 12 million jobs that are open because of unemployment. We can't find the people we need to hire. We have 123 million jobs in 2020 that are going to require high skills. So the business community is very engaged in this issue. They've been engaged in college and career ready standards for years because this is our future. This is the future of our economic. This is the future, and our children are the future employees. So I think that sort of just sets the stage, and then sort of get into the question.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. Heather, I wanted to turn to you with this question: why did the State Board of Education endorse the standards, and how is the New Hampshire Department of Education supporting school districts who choose to implement them?
Great, well, thank you so much, and let me send just a real quick thanks from the Commissioner for for allowing us to be here today. And she's very actually disappointed that she couldn't be here as well. But I want to send a thank you. I know there's a lot of educators in the room, but also to the business leaders that are here for the support that you've provided along the way. Change is always hard, and we at the Department of Education, we really appreciate all the hard work of teachers and education leaders and businesses across our state to ensure that students are learning and they have the resources that they need. So part of the preparation that we are doing in order to make sure that kids have high expectations for going into either college or careers is the responsibility of the Department of Education. We need to make sure that we ensure that the state provides schools with a roadmap, is what I commonly refer to this as, for students to have an idea of what we want them to know and be able to do, as Caitlin referenced earlier. This is actually required by state and federal law, and has been the case for actually decades. The whole conversations around standards and around assessments and those kinds of things, that's not new in the education world. We've been engaged in those efforts for a long time. And every time it changes, we get better with that process. So through what Caitlin had described, New Hampshire was able to go beyond the collaborations that we have had for many years with the New England states as we developed standards and our NECAP assessment. And we started working with many more states and many more educators, many more leaders across the country, many more experts across the country on developing this. So we were actually, when we first started talking about this, and many of you have heard me say this, when we first started talking about standards, I was in another state down south, at the Common Standards. And the conversation that always took place in meetings was, well, those New England states, they're already collaborating with each other, so maybe we can learn something from them. So we in New England have really set the pace or the example for how states can work together to improve student learning. So I'm very proud that I'm from this New England area. So the process wasn't what you may have heard. It certainly was not done in a vacuum, but in fact we worked with partners to host community meetings throughout the state and gathered feedback from hundreds of educators, parents, and other stakeholders as the standards were being developed. The state board endorsed the Common Core State Standards in the summer of 2010 because they heard from educators that these standards lifted the floor of our expectations for students. We heard from teachers that these standards were much clearer than our previous standards, and assisted them to develop their own curriculum with a focus on deeper and more personalized learning. And as many of you know in this room, New Hampshire's really been leading the way for competency-based and personalized learning across the country. So this is very important. In New Hampshire, the State Board of Education adopts or endorses standards in math and English, and those standards are then used, like I mentioned, required by law, but also coincidentally a good idea, to develop measures for student learning. And so in the past we've had NECAP, we're moving into a next generation of assessment by using Smarter Balance. We're in conversations with the field about other opportunities when it comes to measures of student learning, so it's a very exciting time. Unlike other states, we often will hear from folks about the concerns that are happening in New York and in Massachusetts and in Florida and several other states. And that's really important for us to pay attention to. Where are the problems that are happening elsewhere, and what are those problems, and how do we make sure that we don't duplicate those problems here? So those conversations are really important. But unlike those states that have high stakes on their assessments, such as using the test for graduation, or 50% of the teacher's evaluation is based on one assessment, and those kinds of things, that is not the case in New Hampshire. We truly value local governance, and school districts can choose to adopt the standards or not. In fact, and I'm looking around the room, and I know that many school districts that are represented here are doing it in different ways. Some folks have chosen to adopt the standards wholeheartedly as a whole. Some have added to the standards to meet their local needs, and some have even used the standards to just inform their own standards, to look at what they're doing and see if there's things that they can take and pick from there. all of these scenarios and are more being implemented throughout the state, and many districts actually do not have local policies to quote unquote adopt standards, so it's hard for the state to be able to say this many schools are doing it in this way, although I'd love to have a survey go out about that, don't kill me. We can certainly tell through informal polling of our state leaders in different meetings that we've been in that almost all of our school districts are at least using the Common Core standards and academia to inform the learning that's happening in their schools in some way. So just in closing, this is an exciting time. It's a scary time. Change is always scary. But we really need to be shifting, and we're trying to do this at the state level, shifting that conversation now from just that roadmap, the standards that we have in our hand, the document of what the standards say, to really putting our resources and our time into helping educators be successful at this. And that's one of the things that is so different in New Hampshire than in other states, is that we really want to focus on, at the state level, how do we support you? If this is the way you do it, great. So let us support you in that. What do you need? And so on. So, like I said, it's a scary time, and it's also an exciting time.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Evan, from the perspective of Hypertherm, a leading advanced manufacturer in the state's most important economic sector, advanced manufacturing, why is it important for kids coming out of high school to possess stronger academic preparation for the workplace or higher education than they're getting now? And what does a lack of adequate preparation mean for Hypertherm and all employers in New Hampshire?
Well, maybe first some quick background on the company. We're based in Hanover and Lebanon and West Lebanon. We're a designer and manufacturer of advanced metal cutting systems. So that covers technologies, plasma arc cutting, anybody knows about that, laser, water jet. And we actually export around the world. Over 60% of our sales go outside of the U.S. We employ about 1,400 people, of which over 1,000 are in New Hampshire. It's a large technical employee base, so both in design and in advanced manufacturing. And a particular area of advanced manufacturing for us is in precision machining of high tolerance, complex geometry parts done on precision CNC lathes or machining centers. So the history of Hypertherm, or maybe the quick build-up to the circumstance we found ourselves in more recently, was a particular growth burst from 2002 to 2008, when we were growing about 20% per year, and requiring that many more employees, or what we call associates, to support that growth globally. We really had no local source of trained machinists coming out of either technical schools or community colleges, or certainly high schools. And even as a preferred employer, pulling away from other employers in the area, there was an insufficient supply of qualified CNC machining center operators. And we found pretty quickly that trying to do on-the-job training had negative trade-offs both in productivity and in quality, and became an unacceptable route to meeting our needs. So in 2007, we actually established our own technical training institute, the Hypertherm Technical Training Institute, with about a $2 million initial investment from the company. We built up to a dedicated full-time training staff of about 8. We worked with partners to develop that curriculum, Vermont High Tech, and ultimately we also partnered with River Valley Community College to help obtain credit and also be a conduit for grant funding from the states and from the federal government. We actually now run a 9-week intensive immersion-style class for CNC machine operators, paid during the class, and then flow into an apprenticeship program out of the class, and are receiving raises throughout. So these are certainly living wage jobs, quality jobs with upward path potentials that we actually further facilitate. Since its inception, the Technical Training Institute has graduated over 420 students coming onto our factory floor, but also others like Timken Aerospace. So, that's the background. Our actual experience, and we conduct aptitude tests for applicants coming into the program. One of them is a basic math aptitude test, and the other is a cultural assessment, making sure that the right behavioral and attitudinal foundation is in place there. Our test basically is testing an applicant's ability to count change, make change. So, basic operations with decimals. I've got to pay a bill for $4.25. Somebody hands me a $20 bill. I got to make change for that. Over 50% of the applicants taking that test fail today. These are coming from certainly high schools, but also just from the workforce, either unemployed or underemployed. Maybe a little bit more alarming is the fact that more than 90% of the applicants have an attitude either fostered by themselves or by the school system that they're not good in math, that they're just not capable, and have actually in many cases been steered away from careers or opportunities that may challenge those capabilities. I would also say that 90% of the applicants really have not gone beyond basic math at school. So no basic algebra or geometry, or for our case, right angle trigonometry. I think when we're not looking for advanced math skills in our jobs, but rather basic applied math competencies, is needed to solve problems and apply critical thinking. Essentially a basic building block. We need people to be able to understand positive and negative decimals and basic right angle trigonometry. Problem solving. We often put that just in terms of what is problem solving, sort of knowing what you know, what you don't know, and the result you're trying to achieve or solve for. And basic critical thinking, problem solving. And context-based, being able to apply these skills for basic problem solving in the workplace. I said, those that we bring into the program, as I said, they have generally passed the test, but some have not. We also assess attitudinal, behavioral potential, desire, drive to learn, and we'll bring people into the program even who have failed that. But all, even though they've not received, 90% have not received further math education beyond basic, we find that they actually, 90% of the people that we bring into the program pass successfully, learn successfully, apply successfully. And the 10% that fall out, 80 to 90% of those are not falling out because of inability to learn or master the materials, but rather behavioral issues, which I think is also an important issue for our school systems. We also seek to create a foster environment for safe learning and discovering different learning styles and accommodating those, but we do this in context. We understand the purpose of learning. I understand that our schools are not in the business of job training, but nevertheless, we see the power of context-based learning and teaching. So Hypertherm, I'll wrap up very shortly, but Hypertherm's involvement in STEM and the Common Core discussions has been through the Governor's Advanced Manufacturing Education Council, the New Hampshire Business and Education Coalition, focused on STEM. And we were also involved, or Barbara Couch at Hypertherm was directly involved in the statewide survey on STEM, identifying gaps and coming up with state recommendations, including embracing of the Common Core. Really for the reasons that I've stated, we find that aligns very much with our own experiences, both in the gaps and in what works in our own training programs. So we believe in race standards and context, establishing the context of learning with demonstrated and applied learning approaches. We also believe that businesses need to step up and partner with educators and educational systems. We do that both at the state level, but also in our local school districts and on boards, and helping shape those decisions within broader career-based and pre-college objectives. And we believe that rigorous standards, We believe in rigorous standards that focus on expectations and evidence-based outcomes. And we also like the fact, I think as the other panelists here have said, is that for staff provides for flexibilities for schools and teachers to develop strategies, design the curriculum, and respect the different ways that different children learn. It's not a prescriptive approach to achieving the standards, but being committed to raising and achieving those standards ultimately.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Questions of our panelists? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Caitlin made a point, and maybe, I don't know if Heather will be able to answer the question, but we talked about local control of the process here, and it says in the DOE's question and answer, yes, you can have local control, but you have to pass these tests for the standards. Why can't we embrace something like Common Core standards and opt out of the Smarter Balance testing assessment, which is the testing that has caused so much controversy within the school systems? If we as educators, or these as educators, cannot come up with testing that can test to those standards, then there's something really missing. So my question is, why can't we embrace the standards and just opt out of the Smarter Balance consortium?
I'd like to take that just to start off with. So when I push back a little bit, because that's what we have done is we have been in collaboration with other states in the development of Smarter Balance. So I think it's a misconception to say that if we decided not to do Smarter Balance, that we could come up with something better when we've been engaged in all of the conversations regarding the development of the current assessment that the state has chosen to use. We really believe that the field test that we're going to embark on will have many, many challenges. We're going to see a lot of kinks in the wheel that we're going to be able to spend the next year working through. That's the whole purpose of having a field test. But you're right, there are options out there that we could look at if we decided after the field test or after the first operational test that this isn't the way we want to go. We certainly have those options. We do currently, and we're going to be looking at other options in this area as well as we move forward, need to have a statewide assessment. And as business leaders and school leaders certainly, we want to know where our state is in regards to these. And you know, we really truly believe that the work that's been happening in collaboration with other states and the development of this assessment has been a really great process, and it's really a next generation of assessment.
Kate, did you have anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Just to express how I'm a retired educator, now school board member, and I have concerns also about the Smarter Balance testing. I'm awfully afraid it will discourage our teachers. I understand that the test is very arduous. They've only been teaching using Common Core at best a year or two. Most children have not been exposed to this form of teaching for the length of time that I think would allow them to do well on the testing. And I would hate to see anything that would really discourage our teachers. It's getting more arduous, it's more difficult because of all the testing. I think in a sense it's almost like shooting ourselves in the foot at this point. I would love to see the testing be put off, maybe a combination of testing between Smarter Balance and the kneecaps that we have now finally adjusted to. But I think to start next year with the Smarter Balance, we're going to end up discouraging an awful lot of our educators who are working very, very hard. I don't think it's a smart move.
So, and I really appreciate so I really appreciate most people in the room know that I'm confident. So I appreciate the comment, and certainly something we look at every single day that we go through all of the conversations that we're going through. The thing in New Hampshire is that there are no high stakes to this assessment. So I really want to make 2 points. One, there is not a high stakes to the assessment, and if we want to know how how well we're doing in the implementation of these standards, then we need to have some way of assessing it. So, the other thing.
What do you mean by there's no high stakes? What do you
So,
mean by
okay,
that?
so in some states, like Massachusetts, for example, the statewide assessment is used for student graduation. Okay, students have to perform at a certain level to graduate from high school. In places like New York, it's used in a significant way. I think it's still 50% of the teacher's evaluation is based on that one statewide assessment. But I also, so that's what we commonly refer to as high stakes because it's used for a particular purpose outside of just informing instructional practices in the classroom, which is how we use it here. So the other thing that the commissioner has been very clear about is that if there were an option from the U.S. Department of Education to apply for a waiver to allow us not to do a statewide assessment, we would apply for that. Right now, that's not an option. We are asking often, and we will continue to ask that question. We are having conversations with many of our education leaders about different options and different ways of thinking when it comes to student measures, and we're going to continue to have those. Those are going to be ramped up in the next several months because we want them to be. We want to have these conversations. So everything that you said, I value everything that you said, and we're always looking for other opportunities and those kinds of things. Measured Progress has been very clear with us that the NECAP in math and ELA, we have NECAP in science as well, that's going to continue, but in math and ELA, for next year, we do not have the assessment items to continue to do another assessment. And so, we've invested our time, our teachers have invested a lot of time into the Smarter Balance assessment, and overall have asked us to continue to move forward.
Question right there, second thing, yeah.
Ken, anyway, Superintendent of Schools, New York. My question for the panel is about those efforts in teacher development to prepare all of our staff for this process and for the Smarter Balance. I know we were talking at the table here about using the sample tests that are online now through the State Department as a very effective way for us to share with our teachers where those challenges are and how the test is structured differently. We all accept that, right? The question is, what other measures should you see that we should be taking to assist in helping our teachers come to grips with it?
Heather, go ahead.
Okay.
I think the question's directed at you.
So, yeah, so we've got some great panelists up here. So one of the things that we've been doing is trying to partner with common, as Richard in the back of the room, we have been working with CERESC and other entities around the state to help provide professional learning opportunities for teachers in instruction. So, it's not about preparing teachers for the test, although there's parts of that that we, like you mentioned, there's a practice test. There's now a much more robust practice test. If you download the browser and you can go through that. A lot of our schools will be participating in the field test coming up. We're going to get a lot of knowledge from that. I think it's about 90 schools that are going to be participating in that. The changes and how it's being functioned is how time hit. So there's a lot of things that we are trying to do to partner with others. And as you know, we have a little bit of a capacity challenge, but there are so many exceptional educators out there that are really trying to help other teachers and other leaders understand the instructional strategy part of it, but that's really where we're trying to focus our time.
Third table, yes.
This is probably a more novice question compared to the level of understanding of people in the room.
Excuse me, can you project a little bit lower?
So this is probably a more basic question than what other people in the room need to hear, but for me, I'm really starting at the understanding of it. How does this all fit in the context of No Child Left Behind? Is this replacement of No Child Left Behind? Is this funding related? Is it would be, and you can make it as high level as you want, just as a starter to understand it. Thanks.
You're on a roll. I don't want to take away from you.
So No Child Left Behind is a very, very lengthy law with many titles within it, such as Title III, which helps provide services for our English learners, and Title II, which provides professional development, Title IV, which has funding in there for after-school programs. Title I, which is probably the largest component of what we used to call the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, now commonly referred to as the No Child Left Behind Act until the new administration, then went back to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. But it's basically the same act that was reauthorized, and we're still waiting for reauthorization of it. So within Title I, there is a requirement, and it's been there for a very, very long time, for states to set standards in math and English language arts, and for us to have statewide assessments. And with the reauthorization that made it No Child Left Behind, then it was 3 through 8 and 1 grade in high school. And in New Hampshire, we have that as well. And so, so when it comes to the Common Core or Smarter Balance, that's what the state has chosen to use. In the past, we used our grade level expectations and our NECAP for that, and that was fine. So we believe that these are better standards. We believe this is going to be a better assessment, and we can't just sit and do the same thing we've always done and expect better results, of course, without, you know, not to sound cliche. But so it fits into No Child Left Behind in that Title I piece, although special ed has a component in the IDEA law, the Individual Disability Education Act, and also in the Title III law for English learners, there's a piece about making sure that we're measuring student achievement in those areas as well.
Caitlin, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to that. So, and I'm kind of a data nerd, so, you know, forgive me, but I think it's important when we talk about No Child Left Behind, which I think everyone in this room, educator or not, can understand that there's a flaw, there's flaws to that law, and it does need to be reauthorized, and we've been waiting on that for 14 years. But I think it's important to sort of understand what it wanted. You know, it's asking for assessments, and you know, when you look at assessments, there's state assessments, and then there's what, you know, some people in national, and I'm sure Heather too, would consider NAEP, which is the nation's report card. And so when you sort of compare what kids here or what state is considered proficient here and what's proficient in NAEP, it's the difference is huge. So just for example, the last NAEP data, so this is 2013 data, 4th grade kids taking the state test in New Hampshire, state reading test in New Hampshire were considered, 78% of the state kids were considered proficient. But on the NAEP score, that was actually 45% were considered proficient. And in 8th grade, the state test, they tested 82% of the state's 8th graders were tested proficient in reading. On the NAEP score, it was 44%. So you can sort of see, and this is just sort of looking at assessments and what we're asking. So there's sort of this bar, and Common Core is sort of raising the bar.
John Gilbert, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question actually for Evan. And I'm wondering if you or your training group has looked at the Common Core and have done some sort of or started to think about whether or not, you know, kids coming out of that kind of a program are going to be better suited to come into your workplace than is currently happening. Because it strikes me that what you are doing is very, very extensive effort, and it's got to be expensive, you know, for your business. I mean, obviously, there's a real value to that investment because out of that you get the people that you need, the skills that you need. But I was curious to know whether you started to look at that yet, and what that augurs for business in general.
Yeah, I think, well, I mentioned earlier that the testing that aptitude screening that we use is for being able to count and make change. When we look at Common Core, that actually loosely lines up with what would be 4th or 5th grade proficiency in the Common Core as it stands today. And clearly today when we take, so I think, you know, that maybe speaks to, and of course I'm talking about entry-level roles at Hypertherm into CNC operator when we get into more technical roles and ultimately into manufacturing, engineering, and even more advanced design engineering, or even, you know, of course we have a number of non-technical roles that still require significant proficiencies in both math and social science and reading and writing skills. But I think that just speaks to, you know, the fundamental expectations, and probably for us that's, you know, the K through 12 standards, basic 5th grade proficiency, and then being able, Hypertherm being able to take it forward into context-based learning for the particular roles. That would be a starting foundation that would be very worthwhile for us. And then beyond that, you can probably get into 7th and 8th grade math proficiencies for us to be able to take it the final mile to get somebody to a technician role, or to begin to partner more with the technical schools in the area to develop specific programs for that purpose.
Yeah, I just want to mention, so Evan's story is not unique to what we hear all the time at the U.S. Chamber, which is another reason why we're super engaged in Common Core and why we need higher standards, because what we're asking kids to do is we're arming them with the critical thinking and math skills that they need for jobs, entry level or college and beyond. It's not dumbing down the standards. It's asking for more from what we're teaching our kids. It's, instead of an inch deep and a mile wide, it is going down, digging deep on issues that we know kids are going to need, and that's why businesses that we talk to all over the country are excited about this.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
So what impact is it having on teacher projects? Because obviously they're the ones in charge of all of this. And from what I've heard, a lot of the elementary teachers, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them are more focused on reading skills, which we definitely need, but we need those math skills at a lower level too.
So the question is, how does this impact
What-
teaching colleges?
Yes.
Okay.
We actually have some people from higher ed in the room, I won't look at them, but I could probably talk better about this than I have, but it is a conversation that the IHE network, which is our Institute for Higher Education network, has been focused on for a number of years, actually, and how we can make sure that our teacher prep program, that we're taking a really close look at our teacher prep programs and how we're preparing our next generation of teachers to take that on. So it is a conversation that's happening, and it's ongoing. And then we have some higher ed institutions that are a little bit further along in their development of those than others. In fact, we have one of our colleges that are using a competency-based approach in their college, which is really exciting. And so I think we have a long way to go. This is near and dear to the commissioner's heart. As you know, she's from higher education, and she's looking forward to continue work with the IHE network to make things happen that way.
One more question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Chris Ortega, School Board Chair from Merrimack. Caitlin, I think you started to speak to this, but I was wondering if the panel could go a little deeper on it. The opponents of Common Core would argue the assumption that's been made that they're, in fact, deeper, richer, higher level standards. I was wondering if you could do a compare and contrast as to what actually makes them better standards.
Great, yeah. So I'm glad you came up, you asked that question, because I came prepared with some data, my favorite.
Excellent.
So Fordham Institute, which is a education think tank, they're based out of Ohio, but they've done a lot of national work on this issue. And they actually, a couple years ago in 2010, they graded all the standards, so the previous standards and then the states, the 45 and a half states who adopted the standards. And so for New Hampshire, the ELA grade for New Hampshire was a C. And after adoption of the Common Core State Standards, it's a B+. And the math grade for New Hampshire in 2010 was a D. And now, with the adoption of the Common Core State Standards, it is now an A-. So, I mean, we've raised the bar a lot in one case and some in another on what these standards are asking for. And so I think that, and I encourage you to look into that. I'm sure you have as a school board member, but I think that is a really important distinction. What we're asking for and the richness of the content here.
Heather, anything to add?
No.
Okay. Well, I want to thank our 3 panelists. How about a round of applause? The Delhi U.S. Chamber Foundation, Heather Gage, New Hampshire Department of Education, and Evan Smith, Hypertherm. I also want to thank our partners, Northeast Delta Dental, U.S. Chamber Foundation, and our partner, the New Hampshire School Administration Association. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Hey Jim, can I just point out one thing? So the chamber has done a lot of work on this issue, and we want to be as helpful as we possibly can. We've got a bunch of resources online, so just feel free to go to business4core.org, which has got a ton of tools and resources and maps and all the data that I love. And then also, obviously you guys are super engaged because you're here and you're listening to us talk about this for an hour on a Friday when it's so beautiful outside. But don't listen to what we say. Seriously, go learn for yourself. The standards speak for themselves. We don't need to sit here and talk about it all day long. I mean, we do, but we don't need to because they really do talk for themselves. So if you have questions, really don't listen to everything that is out there surrounding this. Go to the place, coursestandards.org has really got a lot of bipartisan, completely, just good resources. So go there.
On that note, good recommendation. Thank you, everyone.